Time and time again, whether investors are wealthy or just getting started, they make these critical mistakes. Do not be like them. Hey, what's going on? This is Maoli Vodi with Financially Present, your one-stop shop for financial and investment education. And today we're going to talk about the mistakes, the critical mistakes that investors make. When investors get comfortable, they start to let their guard down, and that's when they start making these mistakes, these common mistakes. It doesn't matter if it's the year 2003 or 2023, investors are still doing this, and it baffles me. In 2008, they finally got Bernie Madoff, but by that time, the damage was already done. And fast forward to today, we're seeing now Usain Bolt, an elite athlete, one of the fastest people on this earth, on this planet, unfortunately fell victim to a scam. So imagine seeing your account balance of $12.8 million going all the way down to $12,000. Let's go over how Bernie Madoff was able to do his scam and why it relates so closely to how Usain Bolt could have avoided that same result. All right, so with Usain Bolt, his accounts were managed by an advisor in Jamaica, so the rules are a little bit different, or at least the regulations and oversight is a little bit different. But the advisory firm that he was with is called Stock and Securities Limited. Okay. When we look at what Bernie Madoff did, this is all here in the US, and quite plainly, he ran a Ponzi scheme. He would take money from investors and promise them a return of about 18 to 20%. So that's a pretty good return. And he actually would say, hey, we don't lose money. And ultimately, he was able to solicit enough business in different ways and defrauded people by more than $60 billion, the largest Ponzi scheme known to man. And how did he do it? It simply took money from the newer investors to pay the older investors. The problem with this is that at some point, someone's gonna come up short and the jig is up. So what Madoff did that established his legitimacy was he had a legitimate business. He traded on the over-the-counter bulletin board exchange, and then he also eventually found his way up as a market maker to be on the board of NASDAQ. So he was a legitimate business person and highly respected on Wall Street. But where he flipped the script was with his essentially underground advisory company, okay? So now, what are the mistakes that you can avoid? Number one, watch your referrals. Anyone who invested with Bernie Madoff, they learned of his advisory business through someone else. It wasn't like he was putting ads in the paper. He wanted to keep this very secretive and exclusive. So if you have word of some type of exclusive investment and it's being referred to you by someone, you have to validate who that information is coming from and then do some research on your own, because he invested billions of dollars for people and even charities, and those funds are managed by other people. And those were the people that decided to move that money to Bernie Madoff's fund. And essentially, if they had vetted things properly, they could have avoided this. But you have to watch your referrals, where you get your information from and who you want to do business with. If you're essentially being referred to by a specific person, you have to understand, who is this person, how well do I trust them, and how valid is this referral? You have to remind yourself, do not be tricked into something specifically because it's exclusive. That was the big claim to fame with Madoff's fund, that it was highly exclusive for high net worth clients. He would even turn away business because if people ask too many questions, he'd say, you know what, I'll give you your money back. I don't have to do this right now. Do not fall for the exclusivity of the investment. Mistake number two, no losses. Okay, so this Madoff fund, the claim to fame was that there were no losses, that he could not be beat. He always beat the S&P 500. He's promising 18 to 20% returns, and then there's no losses. At some point, there should be some ups and downs, all right? There's no such thing as a guaranteed investment in the stock market, and something with no losses, that should immediately raise a red flag to you. So that's something you would want to do research about, something you'd want to ask questions about. And if someone doesn't want to answer those questions, then that's another red flag. You have to be vigilant about these types of things. The third mistake, people didn't look at their statements closely. You have to look at your statements much closer than you would, especially if you know someone else is managing your assets, okay? The paper that was being used, the idea of the statements, like if you are a registered brokerage firm and a registered advisor, there are specific things that have to be on a monthly statement, okay? So whether it's the trades, whether it's the disclosures of the regulatory bodies that you're under. So FINRA, that's the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, or the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, or the insurance that you have, Securities Investment Protection Corporation, that's SIPC insurance. All of these different bodies are very standard in the industry. And if you don't see these references on your statements, if you are seeing things that are just blatant omissions, things that are left out, that is a pure red flag. And you as an investor, you need to be able to discern a professional looking statement and a non-professional looking statement. Some people don't look at their statements at all, whether it's virtual and you log in online to look at it, or if it's mailed in by person or by postal. You need to be able to look at your statement and understand what's in front of you. And this is the last mistake. This is, well, probably the worst mistake that almost everyone made regarding Bernie Madoff. No one looked him up. If you think about it from this perspective, he was already highly revered in the investment industry, so everyone assumed that they understood who he was by the image that was portrayed. But if you look underneath the hood, he was never registered as an investment advisor until 2006. By this point, he'd been running this scheme for, at this point, decades. Okay, and this is only because he was finally being traced by the SEC. And you can actually look it up online. You can go to FINRA broker check, and then you can also look at the SEC's advisory check. You can see that he was finally effective as an advisor in 2006, but he finally got caught in 2008. The damage was already done. If someone somewhere just simply looked it up and said, hey, well, let me look him up. He's an advisor. I'm managing billions of dollars with him. Let me just look him up online. All right. If you didn't see Bernard Madoff, the securities investment registered as an advisor, that should cause some unsettledness. Something that's going to say, hey, what's going on? Usually this should be there. This is public record. When you're registered in this country as an advisor, you should be able to look them up. These are critical things, and do not make these mistakes. Don't just take someone's word for it as far as what you should invest in. Don't just assume that they're telling you everything and that it's kosher. It can be a sales game. That's really what it is when it comes to advising. All we really needed was for one of his clients to look him up and say, hey, wait, I don't think he's registered as an advisor. Look, word to the wise. You need to understand the SEC, the SIPC, insurance, and FINRA regulations because this is how it keeps some level of order in the investment markets. And I don't say that it's perfect. Having worked in it and having looked from the outside in, it's not perfect, but at the same time, there are some measures in place to try and keep things relatively safe for investors. You have to understand that you can't just take someone's word for gospel. You have to be able to research people, look them up. These sites allow you to look up the complaints that have been filed against brokerage firms, against the people who have worked there, so registered advisors and stockbrokers, even people like myself. You can look me up. Don't just accept it for what it is, because if you aren't looking at your funds, if you aren't carefully being a steward, you could very well log in one day and see 99% of your balance gone because you've invested with the wrong firm or the wrong advisor got to you. If this video was helpful for you, I want you to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the page, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on future content. And until next time, stay present.